of a Hindu Rashtra, Akshaya, Mukul and Saeed Naqvi in conversation with N. Ram.
So this conversation will be about dreams of a Hindu Rashtra, and we know what it's about. This is a very important work which needs to be read more widely than it has been apparently, although the book has done well, but in a popular form, I think the insights it provides into the seeds sown for this, I think are extremely important and of great contemporary relevance. That is Gita Press and the Making of Hindu India by Akshaya Mukul, sitting on my right, and Saeed Naqvi's book, Being the Other, the Muslim in India, came out about 5 months ago. It's a new book, and it has many surprises. His assessment on about Muslims being the other, and how this whole movement has treated India's minorities, but also how it has treated the majority. So I think this is also of great importance, the subject. So that's the conversation today. So my first question to Saeed, my colleague, former journalist, former editor of the Indian Express, used to be in Chennai, of all places.
I loved it.
Yeah. Don't you think Hindu Rashtra is a pipe dream? Because although at the moment it seems to be riding high, the ideology and the political project, it's helpless against our constitution, India's traditions, the great tradition of the freedom struggle, and the response, the pushback by the minorities. And I would say that the party that represents Hindu Rashtra ideology today, with no inhibition of any kind, only got 31% of the popular vote in the 2014 Lok Sabha election. That's the factually, that is the lowest share of the popular vote any party that has got a majority has won in independent India. No party won before this won a general election, a Lok Sabha election, with as low a share of the national popular vote as the BJP did. So don't you think that it's a pipe dream?
Ram, I think it was the most blunt statement when the question of Turkey joining the European Union was being discussed in earlier stages. The most blunt statement came from President Giscard d'Estaing of France. He said, look, Europe is a Christian civilization. That was his argument why Turkey, being a Muslim country, could not have place in Europe. Now, if in that framework, Europe, according to Giscard d'Estaing and various people, in Hungary, this was the common refrain. Across Europe, there were schools who thought that it was Christian Europe. Now, civilizationally, it can be argued, Ram, that if you're the problem arises between Westphalian Hindu state and Hindu civilization. I have a feeling that Hindu civilization is the problem that we have with our neighbors is embedded in that civilizational problem that we in fact inject into the whole thing. What is it? Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan, obviously, Maldives, Burma, Myanmar. All of these are, to some degrees, creatures of a mother entity in a civilizational sense. That is where I think the problem arises. And I simply cannot understand if after 800 years of Muslim rule, as I have argued in my book, 200 years of British rule, and you've gone and made the mistake of creating a Pakistan, it became very difficult to thwart this idea of a Hindu Raj.
This same question to Akshaya Mukul. If you could respond to this issue, drawing from the deep scholarship and research that has gone into your book, which is directly related to this question, and you also bring it up to, this was published in 2015,
Yeah.
and you related to the 2014 general election. You brought it up, you touched upon it.
Actually, when the election results came out, am I audible? Yeah. Yeah. When the election results came in 2014, Geeta Press's monthly journal Kalyan, which is a huge circulation of more than 2 lakhs, and the English journal called Kalyan Kalpataru, which has a huge circulation South India and diaspora for. They really celebrated the result and said this is the first time in all these years that a proper Hindu Rashtra, Hindu government is in power with its own majority. Now is the time to do what we have always been telling you to do, which is, there's a whole lot of the template, which actually they talked about this template, which was published in 1947 in Kalyan. And actually, if we read this, I'll just briefly say what they wanted to do. And this is from Kalyan. They said, this was in July 1947. Once they realized this Pakistan is inevitable, they said this is what the Hindu Rashtra should be. India should be called Hindustan or Aryavrat. It should be a purely Hindu nation and entirely organized on the basis of Hindu culture. The national flag should be saffron and Bande Mataram should be the national anthem. As a matter of basic principle, cow slaughter should be banned. The official language should be pure Hindi, not the corrupt Hindustani and the script Devanagari. Military training should be made compulsory and the Arms Act should be amended. The Indian army should only consist of Hindus, so on and so forth. So, well, this aim of Hindu Rashtra, well, I don't know, as Mr. Ram pointed out, looks difficult. But to a great extent, they are very happy that it has happened. And a few things are at least happening. When Maharashtra government banned beef, cow slaughter, Kalyan and Geeta Press was again talking about it in a big way. And right from 1926, when they came into being, this Geeta Press in Gorakhpur, this is what they have been working very closely in close association with RSS, Hindu Mahasabha, later Jansangh and BJP. And at all flashpoints of history from 32 onward and 26 onwards, they have closely aligned with the larger goal of this Hindu Rashtra.
As I understand it, the Hindu Rashtra project, we know its antecedents from Golwalkar and then Hedgewar and so on. They've written on it. They were Savarkar, who was first a very militant fighter for freedom and then turned his fire on something else. But it's so clearly against the ethos of the freedom struggle, against the idea that India should be divided on the basis of religion, on an attempt to bring together people from all streams of our society, of this vast, diverse country or subcontinent at that point, against the Constitution, which, despite some compromises, is magnificently non-denominational, non-prejudicial to any particular section, which is secular, in the best sense, at least in this part of the world, which provides special protection to both linguistic and religious minorities, which has abolished untouchability, at least on paper, and so on. Now, how does this, which is so flagrantly contrary or contradictory, hostile to the basic founding principles of modern Indian society, of independent India. Pakistan has gone another way, that's different. So how was it tolerated? How was it nurtured? How has it been able to make this kind of progress? And so what are the determinants, the drivers of its progress?
Of the Hindu Rashtra project. Hindu Rashtra project.
I think you throw light on it in your book.
Well,
I was going to ask you also a little later on why you're so critical of Jawaharlal Nehru himself.
I shall dilate on that. Ram, the names we mentioned, Guru Golwalkar and Sarwarkar and Hegdewar, are not the only ones. If you go into the Hindu Mahasabha, if you go into the gentleman who was the president of the Congress party on 3 occasions, Madan Mohan Malviya, and it must be there. He talks of absolutely of Hindu Rashtra in very unambiguous terms. So therefore, it is not only after the birth of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh in 1925 that we have this project. The project has been at the back for a long, long while, and it does not surprise me. As I said, you have had 800 years of Muslim rule, 200 years of British rule, and then there had to be, now the baton is going to be passed on. The British took the reins of power from the last Mughal emperor in Delhi and sent him off to Yangon, where he lived in the garage of a British officer called Davis, and died in a garage there. And they buried him secretly. The grave was discovered much, much later. So now comes the question, the British, after 1857, there certainly it became a triangular situation. Triangular situation. So whom was the baton going to be given to? That was the issue. The British were very ambiguous, sometimes deliberately so, and sometimes they changed their arguments. And I think the final argument is contained, according to me, in Narendra Singh Sarila's book on the partition of India, where he goes, you see, he was the Viceroy Mountbatten's ADC. Nehru loved that kind of background. He picked him up, made him the ambassador to Bern, and therefore he had great access to Mountbatten in London. And he had access to very original papers that no one else did. And he produced this book called The Real Story of the Partition of India, in which he makes it very clear that the British changed once industrial scale oil production in the Persian Gulf, in Persia, had been started, you know, they changed their position. They said, please, Churchill's has been quoted in that book, please keep a part of India for us. And that was, and therefore, if you notice, immediately, as Indian independence more or less coincided with the end of, with the beginning of the Cold War, and one country became an ally, unambiguously became an ally of the West. And we, of course, were navigated differently, and we remained a non-aligned country. Now, the urge to, once you have created a Muslim Pakistan, it became extremely, the secular case weakened in India. You
weakened fatally?
Sorry?
Did it weaken fatally?
Well, there's consequence of, let me give you examples, if may I. Uh, I come from an area which is part of this book, which is called Awadh. I come from very close to Rai Bareli. Everyone here would have heard of Rai Bareli. Rai Bareli, people imagine, is the Nehru-Gandhi Parivar's domain. It isn't. My uncle, my father's elder brother, was the first Congress MLA from Rai Bareli. Firoz Gandhi wove his parliamentary constituency around my uncle's assembly constituency. Firoz Gandhi became Gandhi, and I, as a toddler, I remember that election. Very small I was. And the joke in Raebareli used to be that supposing Indira Gandhi had got married to another Parsi whose name was not Gandhi, but say Batliwala, would the history of India have been different? You know, because they played on, to this day, there is an impression that somehow the family derives from Jawaharlal Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi. That's the impression. And as anyone would know that that is not the case. However, that's not the issue. At home, we couldn't say Jawaharlal. It was Panditji. Anyone said Nehru, grandfather would shout, no, it had to be Pandit Nehru. Nehru was revered, and until his death in 1964, he was the undisputed leader of Indian Muslims. Indian Muslims this side of the border had placed all their eggs in Nehru basket.
We'll pause there. I'm going to ask you about it separately. The determinants of how does this project get as far as it has done?
Congress has played a very active role in it, right from the beginning, if we see. As Mr. Naqvi said about Madan Mohan Malviya, some of the leading lights of the Congress, Malviya, Saeed Govindas, G.B. Pant, all of them were involved with this Gita Press project in a big way. All of them were writing. Gandhi was writing, but Gandhi was writing. Gandhi had a very different kind of figure he was, and later, of course, he fell out with the Gita Press people. And throughout we see that the Congress, in fact, when
as did G.D. Birla, you say.
G.D. Birla wrote a lot, but G.D. Birla also had a fallout later. But G.D. Birla remained because they were friends of youth, you know, in Calcutta, and they were together. They had been involved in a robbery case, so they remained friends. But Congress was an active partner, not only till 47, even post 47. We see during the entire cow protection movement in the 60s that the major committee which was set up had Golwalkar. Had even Saeed Govindas. Saeed Govindas leaves Congress around that time, and he becomes part of it. Then the Home Minister, who was removed by Indira Gandhi, all of them were part of it. So Congress has been an active partner in this. Ironically, in Podar, who was the editor for almost 45 years, he gets arrested immediately after Gandhi's assassination, among some 25,000 people who were arrested throughout India. And in no time we find Govind Ballabh Pant writing him later saying that, should I recommend your name? This is 48, and 51, G.V. Pant is writing him a letter, should I recommend your name for Bharat Ratna? And he says, no, don't do that, I don't take honors and all that. And Congress throughout, in fact, Congress leaders wrote, Congress leaders encouraged, they were part of this core group of Gita Press, they funded everything. So Congress has been an equal partner in the crime.
Okay, I think on this you are together. Now, before we come to that, go into that aspect, when Muslims criticize, I'm going to get personal here. When Muslims take on a large subject and express themselves without fear or inhibition, and one of the best examples I know is M.F. Hussein's drawings of, or paintings of Saraswati in the semi-nude. Now everyone knows that that is the iconic tradition in India. That's how it's been done in innumerable places, temples and so on. But I was quite involved in this whole issue, including the defense of Hussain Saab. I accompanied him to courts and saw the kind of terror they created in the minds of this old man who was not in a position to, in fact, he said, even if I'm arrested for a few minutes, I'll die, is what he told me. But the kind of terror that he went through, and then finally couldn't, he had to go in exile, base himself in Dubai, become a Qatari national, and die as a Qatari national in a London hospital.
Yes.
And the objection, as I understand it, just to reiterate it, is how dare you, a Muslim, depict Saraswati, our goddess. Now, how dare, I'm going to put myself in the shoes of the,
Yes.
of the advocates of the champion of the Hindutva project. How dare you, a Muslim, write the kinds of things you have in this book? Have you got that reaction?
Let me tell you how I dare, because the first part of the book I mentioned some of these things, that in my village of Mustafabad, where I grew up with my mother and grandmother, a very common song at the moment of childbirth was called a sohar. A sohar is a song sung at childbirth, particularly after the 7th month. The favorite sohar of my mother's and my grandmother's, both of whom, by the way, wore saris. Now you can say that is an affront, because there's an ogre in people's minds. They haven't. Anyway, I will come to that later. The favorite sohar was Allah Miyan Hamre Bhaiya Ka Diyo Nandlal. Oh my Allah, give my brother a son like Lord Krishna. Hazrat Bibi Ram, the Prophet's daughter, is waiting. Ali Sahab has not returned from battle, and she is talking to the classical Sanskritic messenger, Sugara, the parrot. She talks to the parrot, says, Ali Sahab has not returned. Go look for him. And if you can't find him anywhere, go to Vrindavan. Now, it is very important that these things be remembered. You know, I threw a challenge the other day. Maulana Hasrat Mohani, founding member of the Communist Party, founding member and earliest member of the Congress, great lyrical poet, member of the Constituent Assembly of India. He never stayed in the bungalows given to him. He always stayed in the mosque on a mat, slept on a mat in Masjid Abdul Labi on Bahadur Shah Zafar Marg. That's where he lived. Now, whenever he went for Hajj, Ram, he came back and his Hajj was incomplete unless he went to Barsana for a darshan of Radha. Now, he wrote songs, hundreds of songs in Braj Bhasha on Lord Krishna. And I give you an example of one of them. He says, this boy from Gokul, he is always playing pranks with me. He is sprinkling colors on me wherever I go. And one day I will crush him in my embrace and squeeze all the mischief out of him. Now here is almost erotic. Now, Maulana Hasrat Mohani, adoration for Lord Krishna. I'll recite for this audience another. More pakha sar upar rakhiyon. I'll say it in English. I shall wear the peacock plumes as he did, Radha speaking, as he did. I shall wear the beads that he did. I shall take the stick and go with the cow and walk with the cowherds in the lanes of Vrindavan. I shall do every swang that he did, but I shall not touch that flute because his lips have touched it. Now, this delicacy of execution, and the name of the poet is Sayyid Ibrahim Raskhan. Can you believe it? The only poet who has written on Lord Rama in Sanskrit, Abdul Rahim Khan Khana. You enter Delhi, Nizamuddin East, that first somewhat ravaged mausoleum. is Abdul Rahim Khan Khanaz. On Lord Rama, the great mischievous poet Ghalib, who went to jail twice, and one of them for non-payment of liquor dues because a Scotsman called Macpherson said he is not paying his due, so he came to court. And then the English magistrate asked him, I said, what is your religion? He said, I'm half a Muslim. The fellow said, half a Muslim? What does that mean? He said, I drink, but I don't eat pork. So, now, this man thought that for his penury, he will go all the way to Calcutta. Someone told him that the British will restore your pension to you. So he walks, he goes on horseback, on palanquin, and on barges. He goes through Allahabad, which he doesn't like. He enters Varanasi, falls in love with Varanasi, does Ghalib. His longest poem that he wrote was Chirag-e-Dar, the lamp of the temple, and in which he describes Varanasi as like a beautiful woman who sees her face in the mirror of the Ganga mornings, afternoons and evenings. He says, Ibadat khanae naqusiyanast. This is the place where people make beautiful music out of conch shells, shank. And he says, Hamana Kaaba-e Hindustanast. This truly is the Kaaba of Hindustan. I can go on and on and on and on.
Now the pause button. The pause, not stop. Okay. Now, some of my Muslim friends who are here,
Yes.
who are, they're
Yes.
quite angry
Yes.
with some of the reactions that come from within the, people who claim to speak for the Indian Muslim community, things like the Muslim Personal Law Board and various others. They say, are they not natural allies of the Hindu Rashtra project? That some of the things we see, which is totally contrary to the spirit, the ethos, the civilizational heritage of what you have just so beautifully reflected on, or touched on.
Well, I tell you, there's a very simple formula. The simple formula is, and it is not all embracing, but it is a formula. The language, as far as the Muslims in India are concerned and the influences, the language of governance, of culture, of Saraswati, comes from the Persian streak. The language of Quran and religious reform is Arabic. There is this, understand this difference. Persian is governance, culture, music. Religion, religious reform, Arabic. It comes from the Arabian. Is there a problem? It comes from the Arabian Peninsula. Now that is the issue. What our politicians did, that they went for the Arabic orientation of Islam. In other words, fair enough, Quran is in Arabic. But the Quran itself, the fact that it is in Arabic was challenged by Urdu poets and in fact by people among the Mapila Muslim. The language of Allah, said the mullah, is Arabic. Challenged, no, said my poet. He said, समझ में कुछ नहीं आता, पढ़े जाने से क्या हासिल, नमाजों में है कुछ मानी, तो परदेसी जुबां क्यों हो? I said, I don't understand, says the poet, that you say your prayers in a language that you don't understand. Why should you say your prayers in an alien language, says he. The same Quran is translated in Calicut into Malayalam. So there's a Quran in Malayalam there. So therefore this revolt and this reform is carrying on while the clergy is clergy's stranglehold was not automatic. He had all the support from the politician. Why did the politician? Again, stop here or shall I explain why? Why would the politician go for the clergy? Simple. We have in this country something akin to uninstitutionalized apartheid. Uninstitutionalized apartheid. The politician is not in touch with the Muslim community.
Okay,
And
on that note, that's a good point to pause at. Now, Akshay, the Hindutva, coming back to the Hindutva project, it's not so much a religious project. Religion is being used. Some of them may be actual believers, but communalism in India, and the best example of that is the Hindu Rashtra project, is really the political mobilization of hate or prejudice or all these sentiments. What is the connection between that and the subject you've researched?
Well, this is a very, very close connection. In fact, if you see around 1920s is also the time of competing communalism in North India. And this Gita Press starts. So 1925, RSS is there, Hindu Mahasabha was already in existence. And Gita Press, why it becomes important is for the first time now, RSS, which RSS people, in fact, Golwalkar later wrote to Podar saying this, that it helped us take our message to ordinary Hindu homes. Not everyone who was reading Kalyan was communal, but somehow they needed a vehicle which could reach out to ordinary Hindu homes in the time when there was an intense period of communalization happening. And these guys, right in the beginning, if you see the 1926 issue of Kalyan, in his editorial, Podar is writing of, it's a editorial which became a template for this press, which they still kind of, they work around it. They said that, you know, one of the things that he talked about is Hindu-Muslim samasya, Hindu-Muslim problem. And he says that the reason why Hindus have faltered and Muslims have done better is because we don't speak in one voice. So there is a need for what the term he's used, Sangbal, you know, is unity of strength. And that we can only do if we stop talking. And he says that Hinduism suffers from these multiple sects, various groups, at odds with each other, fighting with each other. So the project of Gita Press, which is a political project, despite they saying that it's a Bhakti Gyan or Vairagya ka project, it was not. To some extent, yes, but mostly political. And so the idea was to become the sole spokesperson of the Hindus, whereby you kind of paper over the differences. So we find something very interesting here, that Arya Samaj, which was doing a lot of things which ran counter to the obscurantist Hindu groups, they are also writing. Hindu Mahasabha people were also talking of temple entry, whereas Gita Press was completely opposed to temple entry for untouchables. And that's where they started fighting with Gandhi. So this was a political project which remained kind of right from the beginning. And this is, they sowed the seeds, they realized, and they worked as a foot soldier of the larger project, and they were very, very successful.
Now, Akshay, on the same track, you have a section on the response to, on the position they took on the siege or the Babri Masjid and the actual demolition, which should not be confused with any kind of religious response. They may have whipped up religiosity, fanaticism, and so on. And it may have gone slightly out of control, or maybe it didn't. But it's completely a political project. But could you tell people who haven't read your book what the response was to
on Babri Masjid, on Birla?
On Babri Masjid,
Babri, yeah.
On
Babri
Shilanyas,
yeah. In fact, in fact, we can go a little earlier, 1948 or 49, when this Ram Lala appears in Babri Masjid. much later, in fact, one of those very close.
Govind Ballabh Pant, who
Govind
is really
Ballabh Pant was there.
responsible.
And later I got to know through one of the very close associates of Hanuman Prasad Poddar, although there was no written evidence. He wrote later somewhere, which I had cited in the book, saying that of the many people who were involved in the installation of Ramlala was Hanuman Prasad Poddar also, one of the persons, apart from Sakuntala Nair, wife of the district magistrate, and few other Mahants of Ayodhya. Uh, and they kept on it. In fact, the first fund of 1500 rupees in 1949 for construction of Ram Mandir was started by Podar. It was a princely amount of those days. And every month they will contribute some money for construction of the Ram temple. This is much before demolition. After the demolition, they took a slightly bizarre stand. He said, we don't understand what is this hula-bulu all about, because what has been demolished was not a masjid at all, it was a mandir. So what has got demolished is a mandir, not a masjid. So stop talking about it. And they will always whip up some history, some mythical story, saying that how all along it was mandir. And the Muslims who have kind of prayed in a mandir all along. So it was not a masjid. So it's perfectly fine. So stop cribbing about it. Stop doing this political agitation and all.
Before we give people here a chance to raise the questions, brief, and you must be very brief. Question or comment, criticism, welcome, but please be brief, don't go on. Finally, I promised, to ask both of you why you are so harsh on the Congress and what Saeed you call soft, is it soft Hindutva or soft communalism?
Well, the evidence is enormous, and I think our colleague here has spelt out some of that in great depth. The Nehru, we adored him. When he lost his temper, he spoke Urdu. He wore a nice sherwani, he rose in his lapel. He looked like part of the Awadh aristocracy. He looked good, and the sort of Aryan aesthetics were all there embodied in him. We liked him, and we adored him. We revered Nehru. We revered Nehru. Now, in 1964, he dies, handpicked by him. Lal Bahadur Shastri. He made him the minister without portfolio. Very, very close to Nehru was Shastri. He becomes prime minister, goes to war with Pakistan. Terrific. A brilliant war he fights in 1965. Wonderful. Then he reaches out to Guru Golwalkar and he says, look, I need RSS volunteers for civil defense duty, particularly in the Muslim areas. I mean, I remember in my family just jaws dropped. And then there were again and again. Pant, Rajeshwar Dayal, as the Home Secretary of UP, found, along with a police commissioner called Jetli, found a whole trunk full of evidence that in Western UP, Guruji was planning X number of operations. He took this trunk to Pant Sahib, Pantji, Pandit Govind Ballabh Pant. And he said, Lord, he writes in his book, The Life of Our Time, or something to that effect. He writes in his book, he said, we thought that he will say, arrest him immediately. He said, wait, let us call a cabinet meeting tomorrow. He said, the whole issue is discussed in the cabinet. Meanwhile, no one arrives at any conclusion. And all we hear is that Guru Golwalkar has been allowed to slip away and was never to be found. This is all Nehru, evidence about Nehru. Either he comes across as a virtuous young man who played piano in a brothel without knowing what went on upstairs, or he was very, very clever. He was a very clever man. He wanted to become... The day he signed on the partition, I think it became inexorably towards what happened then, what we are witnessing today is a crude. The Congress would have done it a little more finesse with greater hypocrisy. These people are doing it crudely. That is the distinction. Otherwise, Congress and the BJP tweedledum and tweedledee.
Okay, this is a point of view which may or may not be accepted by everybody here, but it's got a lot of substantiation. It's not top of the head stuff. I'm going by, Akshaya has a somewhat different entry point into this question, but this is the last question before we move on. We have to stop, I'm told, at 6:35. You have plenty of time. You have, yeah. 20 minutes. 20 minutes. You said Congress, you criticized the Congress.
Yeah. And
What else could it have done? Let's put it that way.
He gave you evidence that the Congress was quite as complicit as these people were.
yeah, because also Congress, it became, the party was a kind of upper caste party. The levers of power within the party were always held by the upper caste, mostly the UP Brahmins and, Brahmins from other parts of India. And we find that within every time, in fact, I will just step aside for a moment and I'll point out that to Naqvi, how Nehru somehow kept away from Gita Press. They tried innumerable times to get him to write.
That's why he is their only target in the Congress pantheon.
Yeah, maybe. But Congress otherwise, what it could have done, and he was fighting. In fact, when you see the entire Hindu Court Bill time, there was a part of the Congress which was creating trouble for Nehru. Even during, much later we find that when they spread this lie about Nehru that, he eats beef, there is this whole delegation which went to meet Nehru. And Nehru says, why do you do this? They said, no, we don't do this. Your own people, people in your party, Purushottam Das Tandon and everyone else who were doing it. So, I don't know, Congress, maybe Nehru could have done it differently, you're right. But Nehru was also a victim of the party which he had inherited. These are the people who were very close to him at one point. And there's nothing else. And it became a party of the, the government. It was a party which was ruling there.
I think this is a very interesting area. One objection could be that it blurs too much the distinctions involved here, but they've got a lot of substantiation as well. I wish Sunil Kilnani, who wrote a very important book, The Idea of India, and knows a great deal about this, was also here as a third participant. But we can ask him later if he has the time. But now, over to you. But please be brief. Don't move away from the subject. You can comment, you can criticize, you can ask a question, but above all, be brief.
I'll stand this way. No, I just thought we started with that there's a project to make a Hindu Raj. And yet we also came out with saying that the constitution and everything stands against it. So will we have it or will we not have it? Or will the people of India stand against it?
You go first.
I think people of India, I'm an optimist. I think people of India will stand against it. The Constitution of India is this beautiful document. It's not going to be easy, rather impossible if you ask.
With 31% of the popular vote. When the wave was at its peak. Yes.
Well, it is not going to be easy, but this quest for a Hindu Raj, which has other dimensions to it, will continue and will disrupt us. It will impede our emergence as a nation of the stature that we deserve. That we will always remain constrained, we will be shackled unless we resolve one or two issues associated with this fact.
It's a major impediment in the way of progress, the progress that India could have achieved. given the promise of the freedom struggle and so on. Yes, please introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sharad Goklani. The question is mostly to Mr. Naqvi, though the eminent panelist can answer. And Mr. Naqvi, this is also, I wanted to ask this question in the morning session also when you talked about the triangle and the India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. And we keep talking about the partition and the pains of the partition that we are still resolving. To that extent, this question may be contrary to the whole agenda of this session, right? The question
but it must be relevant to this, even.
Yeah. Well, that's for you to decide if the question is relevant and is pertinent to answer. But the question is reunification the answer?
You can't unscramble omelets. You cannot unscramble omelets.
It is a relevant question. It is relevant to this discussion.
And it's also part of a Hindutva project, actually, this reunification that you're talking about.
Shall I tell you why? Shall I tell you why it is not? It is not. Because I asked Atalji once, I said, Atalji, what on earth have we got from partition? It was very difficult to coax an answer out of him. He could go into a pause for minutes and then come back. So he paused and he came back. He says, Saeed, there are fewer of you to manage.
I am Dr. Prabhakar. 16% of the Muslim population has disproportionate contribution towards martyrs during independence struggle. 30%. 30% of the martyrs for the independence are Muslims. Martyrs.
Define martyrs.
Yeah, they are the people who contributed their life towards independence struggle.
Ours was a very non-violent movement. Where did martyrdom emerge?
No, sir. They have contributed themselves to the independence, and after that, it should have continued with they should own this entire thing. And why that has not happened?
Why,
As
in other words,
as I said,
the question is, Muslims who had a disproportionately creditable share of martyrdom have not contributed enough to whatever he wants.
No. He says, why did this happen? Yeah. In other words, the usual thing is partition. Now, as I said, that's a useless question. Partition has happened. Partition is, as I said, you can't unscramble eggs. An omelette. That has happened. We have to find a way within the given framework, and there are frameworks. There are all sorts of frameworks can be thought. But some way has to be found, otherwise the rise of all the countries in the neighborhood, the one and only, China is coming up and so on, so we will remain relatively small unless we resolve this major issue in some way.
Now, transporting myself there, part of the audience, I'm going to ask a question.
Yes.
Because this is, I think, important, and I hope it'll come up also from others. Now, everything is for the nation. Even demonetization is now shown to be a patriotic project. Anyone who questions demonetization is either for black money or against India. What is the relation? Does this Hindu Rashtra project need the disguise or semi-disguise of ultra-nationalism by what they call cultural nationalism? To use Mr. Advani's more sophisticated phrase.
Look, if I were the establishment, forget remonetization of banks and forget all the economic agenda, forget it. I have the following agenda. I have asked 1 billion people in the country to stand in queues outside their own banks for their own money, day after day after day for 60 days, and some places it's still going on. And There is nobody in this great political leadership, not one, who can light a match to all of this. Here is incendiary material and it is not touched. What will I not do now? Now that I've seen that all of you have not only feet of clay, you are absolutely nothing but wool and cotton. You've been able to do nothing. What will I now do?
So
That
the
to me is
implication
the
here is, please note, of a move towards authoritarianism. A further move. We don't want to exaggerate it and call it another emergency and so on, because that's takes you in to a different area. But what he has, it's an important insight into a further move towards an authoritarian project. Akshay, do you have any comment on this?
This is, this is going to intensify. In fact, privately, you forget outside the opposition. Within the government, there are ministers who privately will tell you what's happening about demonetization. There are BJP MPs who are privately talking about it. They stopped going during the last parliament session. I remember asking many of them, you didn't, every weekend they go back to the constituency. They said, no, we don't, because people come and say, can you get the money out for us? But nobody says. You ask anyone in BJP, how does this work? Who are the people who knew about it? It's, this is authoritarian way in which the party itself is being run. It's party run by 2, 3, 4 people. Nobody knows outside, within the government. Forget opposition or what. But yeah, media that way has been not...
What we learned from one of the senior participants is that maybe a few of the leaders were told, I don't know about the finance minister, he may have known, but the cabinet was called and a brief was given before them. The Prime Minister talked to them, but they were not allowed to leave till the address.
They were asked to stay back. Yeah.
Some of you may know it, but we have we had a graphic account of it from one of the senior ministers in the cabinet who participated. He, of course, was supportive of this because of secrecy and all that, but that's exactly how it happened.
So this is authoritarian from the word go, from within the party, the way the government is run, and of course, you follow my way or highway, you fall in line, or you are anti-national, you everything.
Yeah, my name is Amit Singh. A counter narrative to your question about Hindu Rashtra project. The Hindu Rashtra project was to get a Hindu government, and the Gita Press is very happy in having a Hindu government. But haven't they actually relinquished that project? 2 points. One, in terms of appropriation of icons. Look at the icons they are appropriating. They are appropriating Gandhi. They have appropriated Bhagat Singh. Bhagat Singh will possibly turn in his grave that the Hindu Rashtra he's being appropriated by that. And who are they not appropriating? Have you heard of Goalkar? Have you heard of Hegdevar? Have you heard of Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Madan Mohan Malviya? We haven't heard about these people. So that's one question. The second point is, they had this 3 things, Article 370, Uniform Civil Code, the temple. They aren't speaking about it anymore. So haven't they actually relinquished the Hindu project? Haven't they really understood that 30% is the maximum they can get at the peak, and they don't have any more support?
Akshay, you first.
Yeah, it's an ongoing project, So it's, while they've abandoned some, they have impressed others. And I don't see why when you say...
Can't see you, so why did you get up?
Yeah, so, when you talk of... When you talk of, appropriating Gandhi, I don't know if Gandhi needs to be appropriated. He's there for everyone. And a lot of these appropriations mean nothing. For instance, Ambedkar. What you talk about Ambedkar, what you're trying to appropriate, but what you're trying to do, even now, about caste. And there is this, they don't believe in, what is this Hindi word, samanjasya and samrasta. They don't believe in samrasta, where you blend with each other. They don't. It's like, you'll stay at my terms. That's the kind of thing. No, and they have not really. When you said that, where is the talk of Madan Mohan Malviya or Hedgewar and Golwalkar? Where you just switch on the television. I'm talking about Doordarshan, Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha TV. Even morning I was just flipping through and I saw this, they're talking about these great leaders which all, there was only Gandhi for a change. And there was no other leader except Edgawar, Golwalkar, Savarkar and everyone. And see, the project is, it's reinventing the project in time and again, but it's not abandoning it at all. It's not at all being abandoned. It's being done in a different way.
We are doing quite well for time. Saeed, quick answer. Quick
Well,
response.
the names you mentioned, why they are not naming them, is because they are assumed to be inside. They are in the family, all those names. So only they are touching with their wand those about whom there may be some doubt. They've stopped talking about Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, and that again is one of the things. Remember, Vallabhbhai Patel was a colleague of Jawaharlal Nehru. Vallabhbhai Patel was quite a darling of Mahatma Gandhi. And today, the tallest statue in the world is being built in Gujarat, not by the Congress party, but by Narendra Damodar Modi. He is building that statue to there. If you are looking for evidence, here is one final one.
I'm Jayanti, a retired civil servant, and I would just like to know whether this pan-Hindu ideology, which would try to establish a Hindu Rashtra, would it be defeated?
Jayanti, you have to speak into the mic.
Would it be defeated ultimately by the caste-ridden politics that we have? Because I think that was touched upon. I do think a lot of research has to go through because caste goes across all religions also, ultimately.
So what do you think?
I think the caste system will prevail.
Yes, and they want to, despite what the gentleman was saying.
If the caste system were to prevail and we all knew that it was going to prevail, there would be no problem. The whole idea is, again, the gentleman Ram, if you gave me a minute, he raised this question of the triangle I mentioned. It's a very important. In 1947, we trapped ourselves in a triangle. And the triangle, bear with me, New Delhi, Srinagar, India, Pakistan, Hindu, Muslim. This is one complex of issues. And anyone who tells you that he's charging off to Srinagar to solve the issue is lying through his teeth to himself and to everybody. It can't happen. He will have to bring in this line you can't touch unless you bring in the other line, Pakistan. The minute you bring them in, the Hindu-Muslim temperature comes down. The minute Hindu-Muslim temperature comes down, the Hindu consolidation project is hit for a 6. You are in that trap. You simply cannot, there is no exit. That is why you've got to think out of the box. Have you understood? You are trapped in that. Your question that you raise is part of the trap. So, unless we think differently, I myself, Ram, had I mentioned in the book my good friend Vinod Mehta, he died 2 years ago. We were in the same school, we grew up together. Just one final, because that is important. He invited me, he says, Saeed, why don't you write 3 articles for me from the Muslim perspective? I said, you? I mean, I've become a Muslim for you? Anyway, beyond that. I said, Vinod and I, we were talking about what is the solution to this. And this, I think, Ram, is important for me to say it. I said, Vinod, supposing you said to me, 800 years of British rule, 800 years of Muslim rule, 200 years of British rule, you created a nation there, and now this country says, Vinod, look, Saeed, do you want to go there? I said, never. My brother Shanne went there, he came back, I said, Shanne, how did you like Pakistan? He says, nice place, but too full of Muslims. So,
Okay, on that note.
Yeah.
let me conclude this. So Vinod and I said, look, we would have been much more honest had in 1947 we said, look, we are going to be in the steering wheel. We shall not call it a Hindu Rashtra. We will call it Bharat or something. Just as we together serve the British, we together will serve this Raj. I, says Vinod, will be in the steering wheel. That would have been a much more honest deal.
I am Dr. X, retired from Government Health Service. So is the Kashmir problem relevant or related to Hindutva? And the same policy, more or less, what's being followed as initiated by Congress under Jawaharlal Nehru. So can you please explain and how to come out of it?
Now, I have been just advised that we have this being the last session, we can go on a little bit, but we shouldn't go on too long, particularly individual speakers and responses. But you can answer that question. But we have a little more time, I'm told.
I have answered that question earlier. The
Can I?
Kashmir, India, Pakistan, Hindu, Muslim is one complex of issues. We'll have to think out of the box and discuss that whole thing.
My name is Sharda. I'm from Hyderabad. And I want to ask you, sir, you talked about Sufi form of Islam, right? And that is a form of Islam that I have also seen around in Hyderabad. My question is, do you think we can promote that, something using Amachitra Kathas or some form to children so that they know the real truth about the Muslim and the Muslim culture and the Hindu culture in a line with the Muslims?
You know, ma'am, I have played my innings. But give me a media, a straightforward electronic media, and with the agenda that one has more or less discussed over here. And there are 100 other things that one can do. I promise you, this country can be put together again. It can be molded. We need to amplify. What we have done is our media, our electronic media, has played an enormously divisive role in this matter. It's played a very insensitive role in this matter. They have divided minds. And in a country at our stage of development, we needed a public service media. A public service media where we knew what the limits would be.
Yeah, so I would invite some comments, 1 minute, on how you see the media in relation to the Hindu Rashtra project or minority communalism or anything that is divisive, but briefly. But one thing I must say, I'm very disappointed that no champion of the Hindu Rashtra project is here. Either the Hindu Lit for Life doesn't...
No champion of Nehru is here.
That we don't... so if anyone has that point of view, now is the time to reflect it here so that they can respond.
So,
the Hindu Rashtra project, as discussed, is authoritarian. But at the same time, we cannot rule out that it comes from a feeling of insecurity. Why I say this is, you have written a book, Being the Other, but the Muslims are 180 million in India, but global level it is the largest religion. So these Muslims draw strength from outside the country also, religiously and politically, in the sense the feeling of strength, one. And,
please speak into the mic.
Yeah. And as far as Hindu Rashtra is concerned, because you feel insecure, because this country is surrounded by Muslim nations and also Buddhist largely. Throughout Asia, the ruling religion is Buddhism and to an extent Islam. So therefore, this is coming out of a very basic insecurity feeling, I consider.
In Sri Lanka, they used to say that the majority has a minority complex. So you're actually suggesting it regionally speaking.
Exactly what Ram said. In Sri Lanka, you look north and they said, oh, here you have Jaffna and Tamil Nadu and they will overwhelm us. And from the other side, you said, here we have the Govigawas will overwhelm us. So to that, there is no end, this kind of, there is a point to what you say. There's a point to what you say.
Yeah, another, this Hindu Rashtra, one of the biggest problems with this project, which a lot of RSS leaders and BJP leaders will also privately tell you, what kind of Hindu Rashtra you want to create where a large section of the Hindus will be out of it. This entire Dalit movement. Are they even talking about it? We saw what happened during the entire Gujarat movement when this thing. So there are huge problems with this Hindu Rashtra project that you're talking about. And somehow I don't kind of agree on this whole larger, thing that you're saying about insecurity and all that. I don't see that at all.
Okay. I have a question for Akshay sir. Sir, in your book, haven't you overemphasized the importance of Kalyan or Kalyan Patru? For someone like me, or my age, we haven't heard of the magazine.
You must read the book. Read the book.
Yeah, I've read the book. Our introduction to Gita Press was more have been on the religious side, something like Gita or Ramayana, rather than Kalyan or Kalyan Patru.
You're speculating.
No, I'm speaking from my experience.
It's not an overemphasis for the simple reason because it's the only journal in the last 90 years which has survived. None of the contemporary journals in the 1920s, and I'm talking of some of the really big Hindi literary journals from United Province of that time, which have all died. This is only genre-based journal which survived. And people from across the political spectrum, from RSS to Congress to everyone wrote, and it became a good vehicle. And this is through and at all flashpoints of history it was used. So I don't know, because if Gita Press's message was being carried through Kalyan, it has survived. It has more than 2 lakh circulation. Very few, I don't think weeklies like India Today or Outlook have now that kind of circulation. And here we are talking about this kind of circulation at a very cheap price, and message is still going. Someone somewhere is reading it, and it's not only about Kalyan. I'll give you small example of, in 1926, they brought out a 40-page pamphlet called Istri Dharm Prashnotari, which is a kind of conversation between Savitri, the saint, and Sarla, the simpleton. And the Sarla is asking all sorts of questions. And if you read it, and I promise you, if I give it to any lady sitting in the audience, they're going to lynch me. And this has sold 17 lakh copies. And Kalyan was also replicating a lot of that Sri Dharam Prashnotari thing. So someone, somewhere, this message is getting across, and it has a huge, maybe in South not that much, but if you go to entire North India, there's not a single Hindu home you will find where people have not heard of Kalyan or its importance. Well, the political aspect of it did shock a lot of people because no one was reading it regularly, but once after the book they said, oh, this was happening, we didn't know that.
And also the wider implication is when an idea, which is a powerful idea, however bad it is, or divisive is sown, then I think it has an influence greater than even the numbers would suggest, because it will take root. And the whole argument in this book, I think since you're interested in this subject, I would seriously suggest that you read it and then make up your mind, because it's brought right forward up to 2014, its relevance and so on, and also it's qualified. Kalyan was also in decline, right? Yeah. So, but thanks for that question. Yes, please introduce yourself to Mike. I think we can go on for another 5 minutes.
Yeah, hi, my name is Ram. So I just want to point out this, that even without the establishment of a Hindu Rashtra, we have been sending a message to the Muslims in this country by electing tainted people like Mr. Modi. And so what do you propose for the liberation of these suppressed narratives and voices drowned out by the univocal projection of majoritarianism?
I think we should follow the example of Tamil Nadu, where they cannot get any seat.
Yeah, even without the establishment of a Hindu Rashtra,
Yes.
the people of this country have been sending a message to the Muslim people in this country by electing tainted people like Mr. Modi.
As Ram, in his opening remarks, mentioned, 31% of the people.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter, right? We have this first past the post system where even if we get 20% votes, it's still going to be in power. So what is the message that is being sent out to the Muslims, to the minorities in this country?
We are waiting. It is just one more month. Wait what happens in Punjab. Wait what happens in UP. Wait what happens in Goa. And then in November, in Uttarakhand. In November, what happens in Gujarat. So therefore, the electoral process will, get impatient with it. There is all the dangers that we touched on are real. But on the other hand, while the electoral process is on, do not throw in the towel altogether.
I'd like to defend Nehru because not the Gandhi family, but the Nehru, the same. 800 years of Islam, 200 years of colonialism, and then you have a 49-year-old man who has never been free. For generations, his family has never been free. He takes over a country which is torn by partition, a basket case, a case which, when you compare any other country, any other leader at any point in time, I don't think Nehru has been comparable to anybody else. He gave a lot of space research, IITs. He set a constitution with Dalit as a head. These are major things which we cannot belittle him, and I think we should be grateful to this man for what he has given.
I think very well said. Your point of view has been very well, in a short while, presented. The wider implication for me is you have to see it in historical context, the constraints of that time. So he's speaking up for that point of view.
I mentioned how Nehru was revered by all of us. I am talking of the personal disappointments with Nehru. One, I gave you the example on that issue when Lal Bahadur Shastri goes and calls Guru Golwalkar. We knew nothing about him. It was Nehru who told us Guru Golwalkar was an ogre. And then his protege touches Golwalkar. Panthji, whom he then makes Home Minister of India, allows Golwalkar to go away. The BJP, there are umpteen examples. The police action in Hyderabad, I didn't want to even touch on that. The military action in Hyderabad, in which Pandit Sundarlal report was kept under wraps, is a horrible document. Nehru, it was on Nehru's watch. He was the Prime Minister of India. And there were several. Let me not go. Yes, having said that, he did have in a modern vision. He wanted to be India with, he set up the temples of modern India and so on. And even though he said, I did not want any religious ceremonies after my death, they proceeded to do exactly that. And the most religious ceremonies after Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru were held. And so there are these contradictions. I don't think you should tenaciously hold on just to the good. I am pointing out that Panditji went ahead of everybody else. If you read the 30 pages of Maulana Azad's book, or Sirvai's book, that he went ahead and he partitioned the country. Now, it can be he without his imprimatur. Then he goes ahead and he says, we have just fought a freedom movement. No, sir. Can you stay on, Lord Louis Mountbatten, as the first Governor General of independent India? Why? That is when the fiddle on Kashmir took place. I didn't want to go into these controversial areas. So there's a lot of good, but a hell of a lot of bad.
So your spirited objection has got an important qualification. You made them qualify this, and Akshaya.
Yeah, historically, if you look at all the prime ministers we had, I think Nehru was probably the best, despite many infirmities which Mr. Naqvi pointed out.
Yes,
He was
please.
probably-
Yeah, I'm Santana Krishnan. I'm a visiting faculty of the management schools of Madras University, Royal, etc., sir. I think Hinduism is too huge and a bigger concept, which is about 5,000 years world, to be, a guidance only for India. It is a guidance for the whole world. And it has been, narrowed down by individuals to mean something like Hindu Rashtra.
Not individuals, whole.
By many, a group of people, sir, okay. So according to me, sir, what is Hindu philosophy is, human beings are different, they live with a soul. The second philosophy is, sir, they are entitled to look after their family interest with a consciousness. And they can be as much intellectual as possible without losing faith in the nature and above. And they can lead their individual wealth and make money by doing common good. And they can believe in a democratic government and by enabling the humblest. And this is not my interpretation, this is based on the 10 Dasavatars. If you give me time, I will explain. Another 2 minutes.
And you left out an important item.
Yes, sir.
You don't have to believe in God. You're a Hindu.
Thank you, sir.
On a full disclosure, I'm a BJP sympathizer, so my
Welcome,
question
welcome,
is to
welcome.
So my question is to my question is to all the panelists. So since 2014, since Modi got elected, not even one policy has been against the minority, and he's been largely inclusive. So why the left-leaning media is like still trying to lynch him, and like that is how you get your identity? And my second question is like you were talking, Naqvi was talking about the consolidation. So wherever the Muslim consolidation happens in India, for example, Kashmir or be it in Kerala, we have some kind of skirmishes that has always been there in the underbelly. So why that thing happens whenever there is a consolidation in the Muslim population in the country? So how can we like, how can we like avoid that?
The important question is, haven't a political section of Muslims, politically organized, also contributed to this mess?
People turn to me and they say, Saeed, where is the liberal Muslim leadership? And I immediately, my answer to them is that a liberal Muslim leadership is a contradiction in terms. You cannot have a liberal Muslim leadership, just as you cannot have a liberal Brahman leadership. You will, Ram will be the leader and I will stand behind him. And if I'm the leader, Ram and you will have to stand behind me. That is the way we'll have to knit the country together, if conceptually, in our dreams, whenever. Otherwise, this business of Hindu consolidation and Muslim consolidation is a myth. Where is the Muslims scattered in so many places? Where do they consolidate? Except there's one, Owaisi gets up because he's the leader of that ghetto in Hyderabad. Otherwise, where are they? And what harm have they brought to you? Other than, name one instance, how many of Hindu young boys have been put in jails? For 11,000 of them, and some of them for 14 years, without any charges being brought against them. I mean, this conversation has the potential of becoming unnecessarily rancorous. So we should stop there. There is an urge for a Hindu consolidation because Hindu society is divided. And unless, as the lady here puts it, and this Hindu society, and in that process, the Muslim has been found to be the other. That is how the dynamic works out.
Okay. Your final thoughts? You said that there's no policy. You're right. There is no specific policy directed against Muslims. But it's about the fear that you create. It's about the kind of ministers you have, the kind of things they say in public domain. You just see on a daily basis, and nobody gets reprimanded.
And Mohan Bhagwat saying India is a Hindu nation.
And time and again you do that. So you don't have to have a specific policy. It's about the fear that you create in the minds of people, and which is going on relentlessly. You ask any, very liberal Muslims, the kind of things that they have to undergo, which was not the case earlier. So this is a larger fear which is being created, not in terms of policy, and which will continue to get intense in the coming days, I think.
So, on this note, I want to thank our two excellent panelists and all of you for turning up here and taking such an interest in these issues.
And
we
you,
do want,
Ram, thank you.
And we want to end on a note of guarded optimism, which I think is borne out by all the material they have cited. And I think we're really very happy about the fact that we're able to discuss these issues in such a civil way in our part of the country. And I think that's, you don't underestimate the positive aspects of this. Thank you very much.